good now. I'm recording now. I love you. What's up? It feels weird. It feels weird. Can you close the door? Close the door. I love you. All right, recording now. All right. This is gonna be awesome. Hoping so. So we got ourselves a little bit of whiskey here. Gonna take ourselves to relaxation. That's the goal. That's the end goal of all things. All right. So what's going on? My name is Jordan McDuff, and I am a starter watch collector. Very, very starter. And I wanted to talk about where it all began. Now, the time is exactly 6 o'clock on my end, and I'm not going to ruin the watch check because it's going to be awesome. But today's watch is where all of my watches began, at this very watch. And this series that I'm making is called About That Time. And it's literally a history of all of my watches, because they may not be the nicest watches that you've ever seen, but they sure are meaningful in my life and meaningful to others. And I'll be sure to include other people in these stories as well when the time comes for other people to be included, because I've shared a lot and I've made sure to live a life that included other people in my passions. That's the most important part of watches to begin with, is the fact that we can include other people in those things. So we are going to get started with this very complicated Tommy Hilfiger automatic watch. This thing was my very first ever nice watch that was ever, interestingly, I call this God's watch in my life. And I'll go into the story in a second, but I want to give you a few specs on it. It's automatic, no doubt, and if you want the exact number, if this watch fancies you for some reason, I always want to make sure that I give the proper information. This watch is, you know, it's so long, the serial number is so long that I'm literally just going to put it here. And so have fun. I'm going to try and find a link to buying the watch, though I'm not like a sponsor or anything. Like, they don't really care. This is literally just my first watch I ever had, and it's very it's actually pretty rare. I couldn't find another one, but I do know that it's worth around $200, and it's automatic, and it came with a brown band. I put a black one on it for a very long time, and it has this really interesting octagon golden crown with golden hands and a recessed face behind the glass, or behind the crystal. The case is sterling silver, of course, and I've scratched it up quite a bit because it's my first watch I ever had. And I'll tell you the story behind it. It was about that time, way back then, I was just getting into watches, and I loved this one specific watch. It was a Zoo York. It was a Zoo York quartz watch that I purchased with a girlfriend back in the mall. And it was awesome. I really loved it. And it got to the point where I was really interested in watches, starting to understand where all that began. And it all started with Zoo York, a fashion brand that I found in Macy's or JCPenney, one of those, you know, big brand stores. And that watch really meant a lot to me. Because I wore it all the time, and I started really wearing watches when I started in law enforcement back in 2015, 2014 era. I really started wearing watches because we had no phones, no technology back there, and there was no way for us to tell the time, and the only way to tell time was with a watch. So what we decided to do was I purchased a Zoo York watch, and back then it was like $40, $50. And I just fell in love with it. It was awesome. It had a actual metal bracelet instead of the leather, and I thought that was higher quality, so I just stuck with it. And I went to a conference in Chattanooga, and this conference was one of those big life-altering conferences. It was a Christian conference with Brian Hardin, who was actually speaking, and he's the guy who does the Daily Audio Bible. I got to read him one of my pieces of poetry, and that meant a lot to me because he's a really deep individual, and him reading something that meant a lot to me, and someone who appreciates it the way that I thought he would, meant a lot to me also. So Brian Hardin, if you're listening to this, you're awesome, and I really appreciate your time taking out all those years back. It meant a lot to me, even though you probably don't know who I am. So anyway, long story short, I had this inclining. I was actually watching TV, and I was binge watching, I think it was Adventure Time, and I was binge watching the heck out of that show. I love that show so much. I'm not a big cartoon guy. In fact, I kind of am, but I'm not really a big anime guy, but I love freaking Adventure Time. It's just so heartwarming and lovely, and the story is so awesome, but that's not the point. So I felt this interesting urge at very late hours, like 2 o'clock in the morning, midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning. I was eating pizza. I ordered pizza to my hotel room, and I decided I'm gonna go for a walk. I want to go for a walk. I don't know why. I just want to go outside and listen. And so I felt like God led me outside. And so I don't know why, just walking down the street, praying and listening and thinking. It's one of those moments where you think you're kind of in a movie and you're seriously contemplating a lot of things. It was actually a really defining moment in my life. And so I'm sitting here contemplating and thinking about the struggles that I have and all of the things that I've been kind of contemplating over my life. And I'm having this kind of interesting concept of interest, and this conference is changing my life, and these people are changing my life, and I'm disagreeing and agreeing with people and going through all this stuff, and really, I finally go outside and listen, and God's telling me, go for this walk. And so I go for a walk, and I'm walking down this path, right? The small little concrete sidewalk that goes between my hotel and this kind of business complex. Well, I walk into this business, I don't walk into it, but there's like a little walk around outside, right? And so I'm walking through there and walking, and there's this homeless man who's sleeping there. And I accidentally woke him up, and I felt really bad that I woke him up, because I mean, he's already not sleeping well. And so I was like, geez, I'm sorry about that. So what I ended up doing was giving him that watch. I felt like God was telling me, give him that watch. And it started with the rich man in the Bible in Matthew. I believe it's in Matthew. And Jesus, this rich guy goes up to Jesus and he says, what do I need to get to heaven? Because I've already done everything that you're saying, and so I just need to know what exactly I need to do so I can be in heaven and everything's good. And he's looking at things from a very shallow perspective. Like, I've already achieved so much in my life. Eternal life is just another achievement, right? And so Jesus looks at him, sees right through his crap, right, and says, turn away from your riches, and then you'll be saved, right? And then he was like, that's not happening, bro, and then walked away. But what the importance of that is that it is always more important to share experiences and things that you have and things that it is always more important to share the things that you have. Like, for example, a watch that you love and enjoy, but through that time period, it's just a watch, right? It's really nothing. It's just a piece of timekeeping, right? It's amazing. Horology is amazing. I love it. I'm sitting here talking about watches, so therefore it's important to me. But nothing is more important than the message of Jesus Christ. And this is probably where I'm going to turn a few people off. But the reality is that that's what we have to offer. And then there's this interesting contemplation that comes into play with this. How interesting and how prideful am I? How difficult is it for me to give the things that I love away? And why is it difficult? Right? Those are the questions that I struggle with personally, because I'm just like, dang, I don't know how to answer that. Right? And there are times in my life where I'm like, can I walk away from these riches that I have? Can I walk away from it? And I contemplate that a lot. And I've been faced with a lot of interesting things. And so it all started with me giving that Zoo York watch away. And I looked at something that I had that I loved, and I gave it away. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to make myself seem more righteous. It's just what happened. So I gave it away. Didn't think much of it. God just kind of let it settle in my life, and I just went on with my life. I went on and finished my conference and finished, hanging out and doing all that stuff. It's all done now. So I go back home and I go out with my father about 2 or 3 months later. It's been quite a bit. I mean, not super long, but long enough. And so I'm sitting there and I'm at a business meeting with my father's coworkers, and we're at dinner. And this is one of the first times I'm seeing my dad really work, and it's really cool as a kid. I'm not really a kid. I wasn't really a kid at the time, but it's like to really see my dad in action for the first time in reality. And so, of course, I'm dressed to the nines and looking really awesome. And for this meeting that I wasn't a part of, really, I was just kind of tagging along, but I wanted to wear a tie and a shirt and all that stuff. And so I tagged along, and I eventually got to the point where I was talking to this guy, and he was a Marine. And it was really important that he asked me, he said, "Oh, so why don't you wear a watch?" Because I complimented on his watch. I said, "Hey, really nice watch. I love your watch. What is it?" And he goes, "Oh, my daughter got this for me for my birthday. It's really awesome. I love it. It's really great." And that was it. So he goes, "Why don't you have a watch?" And well, as a York watch was the only one that I had. And so I told him what happened. I said, "Well, I felt like God was leading me down this path, and I gave this guy the watch, and that's just what happened. I don't have a watch. I don't have another one." And so I got to the point where I was trying to kind of understand like why this is so important. It did come up, and we ended up having this amazingly biblical meeting. Meeting at this dinner that was supposed to be about business. We ended up talking about God and disagreeing and agreeing, and how men do, right? We sat around this table and we talked about God for hours. It was awesome. It was really great. And finally, it got to the point where we were trying to leave. And so we all got up and left, and we were all kind of huddled together and finally got dispersed out to our cars. And I think we went to Trader Joe's afterwards, whatever. Well, my dad pulls me aside in the parking lot, and he says, "Son, I want to give you something." And he said, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And he said, "Rob, the Marine, wanted to give you this watch because he says that if you give something, you're going to get twice back." And I can tell you that the York watch was not at all the value that this watch is. This watch is worth, probably new, it's probably worth about $300 back in the day. I got that watch for like $40. And it wasn't worth it now that I've learned more about watches and horology and things like that. I've learned that watches that are in the quartz variety can be relatively cheap. So I'm learning that side of the business, but this is that watch. Give a little bit and receive twice as much. And that's what I got here, was this amazing freaking Tommy Hilfiger watch. And this is where it all began. And I call this God's watch. And when I wear it, I remember that God is listening, God loves me, God's paying attention, and God also responds in obedience, with obedience. That God also responds with obedience. Now, I took some amazing shots of this watch. I took some really good shots. It was a bathroom that I was at, and this bathroom had the greatest watch lighting ever. The problem is that the house is being sold, and it was my grandmother's house. So I got some really good shots while I could, and really want to talk about some of the aspects of this watch because, again, if you're really interested in it, it fits really well. It should come with a regular strap. I put a NATO strap on it that came with my Timex Weekender, and I think it looks great with the Timex Weekender watch. But beyond that, the gold, silver, and the white really just kind of go together on this one, and it's freaking awesome. But that's the story behind that, and I just wanted to think about that time and reminisce that time, because this is God's watch, and it's one of the most important watches in my collection, and it started my whole watch collection and me going down this amazing route of watches and understanding what watches are and the amazing intricacies that are inside of this. And even this Tommy Hilfiger, which is a name brand, right, which is not, when it comes to horology, they're not exactly Rolex, okay? But it's amazing that a brand like this can put something out like this, right? And it gives us all kind of this excitement that maybe we can someday also. That's something that I can put together and you can put together, that we can collect and create something that's collectible, something that's awesome, something that is wonderful and perfect to the eye and to the person that is wearing it. And that's the important part, is understanding that even though this watch isn't a Rolex, it's not something that's worth really anything to the watch collectors. It's about its purpose and meaning. And everything that I wear, everything that I have on, everything that I am has meaning. And if it doesn't, then what's the point? What's the value? I can go out and spend $7,000 on a watch that has no meaning. And I'm going to enjoy this one because of what it means to me more than what I did to get that $7,000 watch. Especially if you didn't earn it, especially if you didn't sweat and toil for the watch, for that $7,000, you just got a freaking loan for it. Like, who gets a loan for a Rolex? People do, yeah, but come on, you gotta earn it. You gotta go out and spend that and save and save and save. If you can't get a Rolex without a freaking loan, then don't buy a Rolex ever, okay? Don't do it. Don't do it, okay? That is the end of my video, and I was thinking about that time, remembering back on that time, and this time was awesome. Have a great day. God bless you guys. God bless America, and have a great day.